Hi, good morning, good evening to everyone listening to us today. Welcome again to this new episode of Digital Adoption Show. My name is Akshay, and I'll be your host for today's podcast. A little bit about me: I manage the customer success enterprise team at Whatfix. I've been in the consulting domain around various technologies like cloud, security, analytics, data warehousing, and most recently digital transformation for around 10 years now. I'm based out of Bangalore, India, and I'm passionate about learning new technologies and how technology can make an impact to our lives. So with that being said, today we'll talk about 5 must-follow hacks to build a future-proof workplace. And I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today's episode, Doody. Claire is an industry veteran in the L&D space and has worked for global companies at various leadership roles and has also run her own startups. She's a thought leader in the field of learning. And without much wait, let me pass on the stage to Claire. And Claire, let's get in the hot seat and we'll look forward to your introduction first.
Thanks, Akshay. It's great to be talking to you today. Yeah, so I'm Claire. I work with people who want to change work. I set up a consultancy called Work in Motion. So I do that by working with individuals one-to-one as a thought partner. I run peer-based inquiries into the future of work and the future of learning and development. And I help companies to develop and execute their strategies for new ways of working. So that's me, and I'm here for the chats. Delighted to be here.
Thank you, Claire. We're pleased to have you here with us. All right, so let's get into the discussions. And I was going through your LinkedIn profile, and it's quite fascinating to see that you have over 20 years of experience in learning, higher education and consulting roles, across the industry base. You worked at, various companies, and most likely, I think the recent one was Twitter as well. So do you see a common problem between these sectors when it comes to training the employees, learning, higher education and different consulting?
Yeah, I mean, I speak to people from lots of different, industries as well. And to me, I think there is a common problem that regardless of what sector you work in, if you work in learning and development, and that's the belief that training is the solution to whatever problem presents itself. So, often L&D is in a silo. It's like, we're the training people. Come to us for training. We deliver training. That's what we do. And, some of it is structural because it's siloed a little bit. And some of it is just a need to reframe and recalibrate the role. Because I think most organizational challenges cannot be solved by training alone. It might be that there's a new technology needed, or the process is flawed, or, it could be that leaders aren't role modeling the behavior, but you're trying to, get everybody to role model, to behave in a certain way. So in those situations, training can actually become part of the problem. And it's when training can get when you can get negative feedback that it's not working, but it was never going to succeed because it wasn't looking, at the problem in its wholeness. So I think L&D leaders today need to expand their thinking and really check that they're perceiving the problem and understand their role either as one piece of the puzzle, or else to step up and bring other problem solvers into the team and establish a cross-functional team to really move the needle. So, it's ultimately about how can we create the conditions for this company to thrive. And yes, training is part of the solution, but so is mindset and culture and systems and structures. And once all those elements are working well together, you have a chance to make a big difference.
Absolutely. And I really second your thoughts. Some of the keys which I could really pick here, I second those, the mindset, the culture, systems that you spoke about. And, frankly, the last couple of years, or rather the post-COVID era, has changed a lot. I could, when I was working with my customers at Whatfix, I deal a lot with the L&D leadership, who want to change the training. And we could see the similarities in what you spoke about, like the non-structured or siloed approach of learning, learning probably scattered across the organization. So my question to you is, post-COVID, technology has become a backbone of any L&D function. And how do you think can leaders use technology more effectively while keeping the human element in mind? because it's all about mindset and cultures that you spoke about in the end. So how do you think technology can complement it well?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think technology can make experiences more human than being physically in the same room together. Like, okay, when I started my career 20 years ago, there was a very strong, gap between being alone, working through content on an LMS, and today where, there can be really transformational learning experiences, when you're using like things like Slack and Miro and Zoom, and you've got multiple touch points. It can be very powerful. And it's not that I don't think there's, I have nothing against in-person experiences. I think that we crave that connection. But a well-designed tech-enabled learning can be really human, and it can create a continuity outside the classroom to build a more sustainable relationship across peers, and it can be much more inclusive. If so, I'm participating in a course at the moment that's being run out of Canada, so I don't have to get on a plane from Dublin, abandon my husband and to the 3 kids, pay for a hotel, pay for flights. I can participate in that course from here. And also for introverts, they can manage their energy levels better than being like overwhelmed by just the experience of being around lots of people. So there's benefits that, technology brings to L&D that you just can't have in the classroom, and not to denigrate classroom experiences. I love them too, but I think there's huge opportunity. Now, what I will say is there's a caveat, which is that, to get to that very high standard, you need really good learning design, and you need really good facilitation to create those experiences. And that creates a tension almost between scalability and the number of touch points, or how human, how much, facilitator moderated the program is. And then on the other end of the spectrum, sadly, there's plenty of just content, festering away on learning management systems that would make you feel very isolated using e-learning, and, or the tools aren't being fully utilized. But there's great opportunity. I think it's never been more exciting, really, for L&D to start using technology. We're past starting, but to really exploit what's available.
Got it. Thank you. And can't agree more. Well-oiled and well-designed technology ecosystem is the need of the hour. I happen to be talking to, the VP of one of the largest tech recruiting firms in the world. And it is good to see how their roadmap or their vision talks about human-centric training and applying that into day-to-day roles. So it looks like the technology world is going to make a huge difference in the way we impart trainings and, the whole L&D, how is it going currently. All right, I'll move on to the next question. With your vast experience, and working with different organizations, do you have any examples from your past organizations where you feel you wouldn't have been able to accomplish what you did without the technology?
Like everything. I mean, most of my professional accomplishments have been enabled by technology, because actually I started my career in the year 2000 developing e-learning when it was like, the internet connections were really crummy. And anyway, most of my career has involved technology in some respect or another. I mean, COVID is the obvious, poster child, I suppose. Every L&D professional has a COVID story. At Twitter, we could do like a rapid pivot to online onboarding the minute. I mean, we were phoning people, telling them not to get on a plane to come over to San Francisco for their onboarding. So we pivoted to an online onboarding, and that enabled people to start working at Twitter, to start earning their salaries. And it enabled, Twitter to continue with its mission, and the machine would have really slowed right down if we had to stop. But like beyond COVID and those obvious examples, like in Corville, where I led out customer education, we had when I started, we had a 4-day classroom certification, and we converted that into a blend of self-directed and instructor-led. And we had actually built out an online lab where people could practice their skills in the technology. And it just meant we could scale as the company grew. And the lab, I think, was an enhancement that, wasn't available when we were doing the classroom. So people could really tailor to what they needed. They needed more practice or less practice. They had the opportunity to do it. So yeah, good question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the learning ecosystem, anyways, it's kind of changing, and I'm wondering how much when you launch these new programs, you spoke about the e-learning systems and all.
Yeah.
What success do you get at the beginning of it, or is there any kind of friction points that you see with people approaching it or changing the way or the earlier styles of looking at retraining, learning, upskilling? Like any instances you want to share from your experience,
Sure.
director at Freeter?
Yeah, I can. Actually, two examples come to mind. I'll stick with Corval for the moment because that was one where, when we shifted to the new format, we wanted to offer some customers instructor-led online. So what everybody wound up doing with Zoom during COVID, but this was before it, and our instructors, who were engineers effectively, they really didn't like, they loved being in the room with people. They found the whole format of online facilitation really challenging. And I would say that is an art form. So actually, when I started in Twitter, then we all got certified in online facilitation from LPI. You can't just pick up a Zoom and think that you can teach in the same way as you would have done in the classroom. It's very different. So I think just respect that that's a new skill set. And I think the world has come so far during COVID, but still, I don't know if everyone has taken the time to really invest in developing their facilitation skills,
Yes.
in the virtual world. And the other example I give you about digital adoption would be at Twitter. I led out global organization effectiveness, or it was an initiative called How We Work. And one of the perceived problems was at Slack. We had introduced Slack, but there wasn't full uptake of it. So what happened was half the company was using GChat and half the company was using Slack. And people came to me saying, we need a training. And I was like, do we need a training? I mean, that's true, but it's not the full truth. It's partial. So what else do we need? So this goes back to that bigger picture thing. So I partnered with IT and we learned that actually different functions had different levels of adoption. And when we shared that data with the leadership, they all kind of got a bit actually, my function isn't using it and I haven't been using it. And it was all about role modeling. Once the leaders started to use it with their organizations, the people got on, but they didn't actually need training, wasn't an obstacle to adoption. It was once people were in, then it enabled them. We did develop resources with IT that helps people make the most out of it, or minimize the disruption, or establish etiquette around using Slack. But it wasn't the barrier to entry that everybody thought it was. So I think maybe that shares some insight with you about how people feel about taking on new technology.
Oh yes, I mean it's a mindset change as well. When I work with my customers, I get to hear a lot. We have this whole new systems. Very clearly laid out processes and so we have help, but still people are not ready to use it. Sometimes it's just easy for someone to reach out to a colleague and say, hey, how do you do this, or how do you help me with this? So I think it's about conditioning, as we've spoken about earlier as well. And your incident about how half your company was across Slack and Google Chat, I think it takes me back to the COVID days, March 2020 again. Our organization was going through the same transformation internally. Half of our company was on Google, and then we introduced Slack because engineering teams found it effective. And the initial point is, I think the sticking point is, the first few weeks, but until you make that transition and when everyone is moved around, I think, today, if you ask me, I would be so hesitant to move away from Slack because I can get a lot done, different groups, chatting with different teams. So collaboration at a different level. So
yeah. And I think with us, Slack was similar. The engineers brought it in, it was sort of a grassroots driven, engineers liked it and found it useful. And the rest of us were a bit slower to kind of adopt it because maybe it had come in as a grassroots thing. But once there was sort of a leadership position that we should be using Slack and people started demonstrating that, we really got to critical mass that way. And of course, there were some that stayed on Google Chat, but there was no ambiguity about where where the majority of the organization was.
Awesome. All right. Now, next one is my personal favorite, and I'm going to pick your brains in your experience further on the L&D strategy. So, my next question is: how do you create a change when building an L&D strategy? What 3 things you should be keeping in mind?
So, the first one, and like this could just be all 3, but the first one is about understanding the business and what its purpose is. Like the coming along with a standard playbook of offerings from what I suppose the standard L&D offering of onboarding and manager training and whatever that is. You really need to understand what's important to your business and what's important to your business over the coming years. Like if your business is going to double in size over the next 18 months, you will probably benefit from putting in place some diverse hiring and interviewing skills. If your business wants to break into new markets, how can you help them do that? And, sometimes it's a scary conversation to have when you really don't know the answer. Like, so a lot of people want to go into conversations knowing that they have the answer and that they can, deliver for that person. But, it's very powerful even just to have that conversation with the business. You get them much more bought into what you're trying to do. And if you listen to what they're telling you, you'll understand how you can really make an impact. That's number 1. Understand the business. So number 2, I think you have to get ruthless about what you focus on. And my experience over many years has been that you can quickly become an order taker. You can come under pressure from various parts of the business to do things for them. And if you don't have a framework for taking things on and rejecting things, the list starts to mount. You just don't have the resources or the capacity to take it all on. You spread yourself too thin and you get nowhere. So really choosing only 2 or 3 things that will impact on the business and that you can invest all of your people into working on it and all of your resources, that will be a much better way to move. And finally, then the third thing, kind of related to what I was saying earlier, just to zoom out and expand your thinking, and appreciate that very few things can be addressed by learning alone. Looking at the mindset, the behaviors, the culture and the systems, and really asking yourself, what's incentivizing people to behave or to act in the way that we're trying to address, and what's getting in their way. So I think we need to reframe L&D as a performance consultant, so there doesn't always mean that there's going to be training in the solution.
Absolutely. I really love the 3 points. And the last one, which you said, transforming L&D into performance consulting, right? So usually I've seen this across that, L&D units are just probably limited to a part of the organization, but not entire organization, or some of the new units or new business units, when they start with more business applications, they don't have support of L&D. Probably they don't realize the need of doing so. But having said that, I think over the course of time, with my experience, I've seen a lot of companies then realize and bring L&D back into the business, because it's not just about one-time need, one-time setup. It's about a continuous learning and iterative process. So I think, yes, the whole reason for transforming the purpose of L&D is very important. And I think culture also plays a big culture, language, mindsets play a big role in it.
Yeah. I don't know if you've come across Bob Mosher, and I can't remember the name of his company, but they talk about the 5 moments of need and really designing your performance support rather than learning to give your learner the least amount of information needed in that moment to complete the task at hand. And actually, a lot of the output from that is more like process drawings. This is how the process works, and I know where to go to get the information that I need, and working with the subject matter experts rather than or working with the people doing the work rather than with the subject matter expert who might be a bit detached from it.
Absolutely. I think contextual learning in the flow of work, learn when you need it and in the right place. So that's a very good conversation. I think, we can go over and over it, but in the interest of time, I'll move on to the next question. And one of the very common questions organizations usually have, and I too get it a lot, when I work with multiple customers, is how do you calculate the ROI of a great workplace? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always hard to measure everything. Like some things you cannot measure, and for that reason, I feel L&D sometimes falls back on completion rates or that type of data. But there's lots of other information around the workplace that will give you an idea if you've got a great workplace or not. You can look at hiring data. What's the rate of acceptance when offers are made? Does that tell you that you have a good reputation, or that the candidates have had a good process, a good experience? You can look at attrition data, and actually an interesting thing a colleague of mine at Twitter did was look at the average tenure of employees that took a career development course and the average tenure of the same kind of equivalent cohort that didn't. And those that took the course stayed 7 months longer at Twitter than those who didn't. Now, it's hard to know what the cause, if there was a causal relationship there, but it's definitely an interesting correlation. And I think it's really interesting to look at trends in certain role categories, like do mid-level sales people leave typically after 18 months? What's happening there? What's happening at 12 months or 14 months when they might start to look around? Is it a lack of progression? Is it compensation and incentives? Like what's happening in the system and what's happening, in terms of, any intelligence that you can gain when you start to see trends in data around attrition is very interesting, even if your company doesn't do leaving interviews, which of course are another rich source of data. And then employee sentiment surveys, there's loads you can do with these. You can dig into how people are feeling about how easy it is to work. You'll hear there's too many meetings, or decision making is too slow, or another good one is looking at managers. What are the expectations of our managers, and what is our employee sentiment survey telling us about those expectations? So learning and development can get lots of clues from those employee sentiment surveys as to, whether they're contributing to a healthy and effective workforce.
Absolutely. I second you. Attrition data, average tenure of the employees, those are really, really deeper insights, and we are my current company, Whatfix, we do run these employee sentiment surveys. In fact, there's something interesting that we have. We have a tool, works as a virtual assistant to our leadership, including our CTO and CEO, and employees can anonymously chat with that tool, and you can pass on the direct feedback without worrying about anything, to bring it up to the leadership, right? So I think those are really commendable ways of caring about employees and also the people, again, the human touch in every aspect of it, right? So
yeah.
All right, so I'll move on to the last segment of our chat today. Something on a lighter note for our listeners today, the rapid fire questions. And the first one, I was, when I'm going through your profile on LinkedIn, I got to know you're from Ireland, and one of the beautiful places on this planet, and I really want to be there and visit. And I was fascinated to just know if you must have watched a popular show called Game of Thrones, and have you been to any of the locations where this was shot in Ireland?
I have.
Oh.
It's funny. I'm not a big enough Game of Thrones geek to be able to map it back to the location in Game of Thrones where I've been, but a lot of that was filmed in Northern Ireland, and along sort of the Northern Ireland coastline and castles, and there's a lovely, I can't remember the names of
Castle
places.
Was one more though.
Yeah, and my husband and I got down to Northern Ireland, a beautiful part of the world, and we did the Castle Reedy rope bridge, and we did Giant's Causeway, and there's a lovely pathway that's like all tree lined, and I think it's when people are going to Winterfell, it's like it's kind of a well-filmed tree-lined avenue that's very beautiful, and I cannot remember the name of it.
Yes, and on record, I want to say it. I'm not a Game of Thrones nerd as well. I just happened to watch it for the sake of it, but not a nerd. So I don't know locations by the name either. Yeah,
it was a while ago,
Yeah, it's a while ago, and now they're coming up with a prequel to it, which is just going on. I happened to watch the episode today.
Yeah, we're watching too.
Awesome. All right. The last one, outside of work, what are the things that you enjoy doing, Claire?
Yeah, I think my most noteworthy hobby, because it's very off-brand for most people who know me, is that I go sea swimming. And I took this up only a year ago. Sea swimming became really popular in Ireland over COVID because you couldn't really, everything else was closed, but you could go to the sea and get in for a dip. And I didn't start during the lockdowns, but some of my friends did. And I eventually got into it. And it's like freezing cold in the middle of winter. Every Friday, I will go in and freeze my ass off and run back out, and I will feel amazing afterwards. So sea swimming is a big love of mine. And the other hobby that I really love is getting out for a walk. Very lucky we live near the Dublin mountains, so there's beautiful like pine forest, nice views of the city. And yeah, I've started, used to be my thing, but now I've started to, my children are my youngest is kind of old enough to sustain like a 1 hour hike. Maybe we'll get up to 90 minutes, but I've decided it's going to become a family affair, because otherwise I don't get out enough.
Oh, amazing. And now I earn more to visit Ireland, Dublin, and all the beautiful places that we've been around. I can't do open water swimming or sea swimming. At least it'll take me decades, even if I go through the training, coaching, and learning there. But yeah, it's really good to know. And yeah, this was a fun chat, Claire. I know we are on top of the hour. It was great interacting and learning from you, and I hope you too had fun talking to us. And we look forward to catching up again. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Akshay. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners. And this is your host, Akshay, signing off.